How does something as uninspiring and obscure as the global distribution of sea lion populations provide evidence for an old Earth? Let's find out. Hello everyone and welcome back to The Simple Skeptic. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Hit that little bell, you'll be notified every time a new video comes out. If you have any comments, leave them down below. And share this with your friends if you wish. Hit the like or unlike. I can't tell you what to do, but a like would be preferred. To answer our question, we need to learn a little bit about the group of aquatic mammals collectively known as pinnipeds, from the Latin meaning fin foot. They are further divided into three main groups: the Odobenidae, with the walrus being the only species; the sea lions and fur seals, comprised of 15 species; and the true seals, or Phocae, with 34 species. Kids, you could probably scare your parents by saying Phocae because it sounds almost dirty. Okay, let's get serious again. For our purposes, we will be concentrating on the Otariidae, the sea lions and fur seals. The fur seals are slightly different from the rest of the group in having a denser underfur layer, which both gave them the name and made them more valuable to hunters. But the difference in terms of what we're discussing is absolutely zero. The name Otariidae means little ear and refers to one of the distinguishing features separating them from the seals, which have no external ear protrusions. Now let's go back to our map of sea lion distribution to see where this fits in with an Earth that is much older than the 6,000 years that creationists cling to with an almost unseemly lust, and is the basis of their outdated, disproven, and quite frankly ridiculous worldview that relies on magic for everything. This shows Otariidae species in the North Pacific Ocean, the western coast of North America, the Galapagos Islands, down the western coast of South America, across the coastline of Antarctica and associated islands, South Africa, and southeastern Australia and New Zealand. Notice some blank areas? Other than the areas along the western coast of the Americas, there are none in the areas we would often consider tropical. Those that seem to be in tropical areas are associated with cold water currents. There are no sea lions in the North Atlantic Ocean, and there is no fossil or paleontological record of them there. And this was what started me down the road of investigating why. I enjoy getting to the Atlantic, about a day's drive from Simple Skeptic World headquarters in Pickering, Ontario. I enjoy seeing the bird life, the whales and seals, but there are no sea lions. Why not? And how does it provide evidence for an old Earth? To see why, we have to start back in the Oligocene epoch, which lasted from about 33.9 million years ago to 23 million years ago, and the Miocene, between roughly 23 to 5.3 million years ago, for evidence both biological and geological. This is when geological evidence indicates that there was a warming period on Earth, with rising sea levels and a consequent significant change in climate. This is something we're facing again today. For the biological component, the exact lineage of pinnipeds is still a bit of a question mark, with the current scientific consensus favoring a monophyletic origin, but with some evidence supporting a diphyletic model with seals and sea lions evolving separately. But this is no problem for evolution in an old Earth, as further research, using proper science instead of fables written before the authors knew much of sea lions and walruses, will no doubt answer the question one way or another. To help with details on the monophyletic model, our old friend Time Tree clarifies things. Using the California sea lion genus Xalophus and the harbor seal genus Phoca, we see that the divergence occurred approximately 23.8 million years ago, sometime in the very late Oligocene or very early Miocene. A very important question relating to our story is, where did pinnipeds originally evolve? The evidence favors the Northeast Pacific Ocean, so let's simplify things by seeing the area we now call the Gulf of Alaska. Despite various warming and cooling periods during the history of Earth, the northern latitudes like this would usually be cooler than the areas further south, so aquatic animals evolving there would be suited to cool temperatures. Following the monophyletic model of pinniped evolution, the Phocae would have diverged from the Otariidae after the Otariidae evolved from land animals. This may be indicated by the fact that seals are further adapted to aquatic life than sea lions. They have lost their external ear protrusions, but more striking is their difference in moving on land. Sea lions retain the use of their front and hind limbs to maneuver, but true seals have flippers that are fully adapted for swimming, and when on land they shuffle along on their bellies, even over rocky surfaces. This looks painful to just watch, but they don't seem to be bothered by it. Another evolutionary development in the Phocae seems to be a greater adaptability to different water temperatures, which has allowed them to colonize areas that sea lions could not spread into. We'll go over that in a moment. There are species in tropical areas, others that favor temperate waters, and others that are exclusively found in Arctic and Antarctic seas. This is another point for evolution. Species that are adaptable have a greater chance of surviving and evolving further. If you remember from earlier, there are 15 living species of Otariidae, but 34 species of Phocae, and not long ago there were even more, but some were made extinct by human interaction. Now let's go back to the sea lions and find out why they don't have such a large range. This is where geology comes into play. When the sea lions were evolving, the map of Earth, while very similar to what we see today, had some minor but very significant differences. The most important for this discussion was Central America, specifically the area we now call the Isthmus of Panama. We couldn't call it that then for the simple reason that it didn't exist. Instead of a narrow band of land joining North and South America, there was a wide passage that allowed the free flow of water between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Consequently, water temperatures and perhaps other factors were basically equal between the two large oceans, at least in that area, and presented a problem for the cold-adapted sea lions. Moving south along the coast of North America, they couldn't breach that warm water area to colonize further. But about 15 million years ago, volcanic activity began to form islands between the two continents, and these eventually grew. About 3 million years ago, into the isthmus that we know today. It's still a very narrow strip of land that seems almost insignificant, but in the opinion of many geologists, climatologists, naturalists, and experts in many other associated scientists, it may be the most important geological event to happen on Earth in the last 60 million years. With the passage now closed, there was a profound effect on ocean currents, and this had far-reaching effects in many areas. For our purposes, this meant that cool water currents were now flowing along the western coast of the Americas, which made it more conducive to the southward expansion of sea lion populations. Once they were able to expand their range, they soon reached the even cooler waters of the southern Pacific, where they went on to colonize many areas in the southern hemisphere of our planet. However, there was still a barrier. The currents in the mid-Atlantic were warm, as with the well-known Gulf Stream. This is what has prevented sea lions from expanding northward along the eastern coast of South America. Their physiology is still incompatible with warm waters and keeps them out of the North Atlantic. If I want to see any, I'll have to take a trip to the west coast of Canada, where Steller and California sea lions play in the waters of British Columbia. If we entertain the fantasies of creationists, it's obvious that 6,000 years would definitely not be enough time for these evolutionary, climatological, and geological developments to occur. If they try to invoke the fable of a global flood, allegedly occurring only 4,000 years ago, presumably sea lions would have a chance to become distributed in all sorts of ways and in all sorts of places. But why does it seem to coincide with what science shows us about the history of Earth's oceans and landforms? Now it's up to them to answer these questions. Why would some unknown creator distribute our subjects in such a manner? Why give us hints of a chain of developments that can be explained by various natural sciences instead of just placing Otariidae either in one specific place or everywhere? As usual, you can explain anything if you invoke magic. But when a scientific explanation is available, why believe in something that you have no evidence for?